My name is Ruth. I'm 81 years old. I was born in Indiana, raised my 3 children with love, and survived a war, a recession, and the death of my husband. But nothing, not even cancer in my 60s, broke me the way my own son did. His name is Daniel. He is my firstborn, my pride. And for 15 years my tormentor. It wasn't the bruises on my arms that hurt the most. It was the bruise to my soul when I realized the same little boy I once sang lullabies to now yelled in my face and called me worthless. I gave him life, and he made me feel like a burden. The last straw came the night I fell. He didn't push me, no. But he watched, and he didn't help me up. I had dropped a spoon, and when I bent over to pick it up, I lost balance and slammed hard onto the cold kitchen floor. The tile felt like concrete. I cried out for him. He stood by the fridge, sipping a beer, watching me tremble on the ground like some dying animal. "Get up," he said. "You're not crippled, just old." And then he walked out. Just like that. That was the moment something broke inside me. But it wasn't weakness. It was the silence. I knew right then. I couldn't stay silent anymore. But what do you do when you have no money, no allies, and no proof? When your bruises heal before anyone sees them, and your tears dry by morning? That's where my story begins. Because I didn't always live like this. I wasn't always this fragile old woman in Daniel's basement with no voice and no choices. There was a time I was the strongest person in the house. Back in 1968, I married Thomas, my sweetheart from church choir. He was kind, hardworking, and never raised his voice. We had 3 children, Daniel, Mark, and Lucy. I stayed home, baked pies, packed lunches, and taught them to say grace. Daniel was the loud one, the curious one. He asked why to everything. When he was 5, he asked me why people grow old. I told him, "Because we're lucky to live long enough." He smiled and said, "Then I hope you live forever, Mom." That little boy is long gone. The change began slowly. After Thomas died of a stroke in 2006, Daniel was the first to say, "Mom, you shouldn't live alone. Come stay with me." I was grateful. He had a big house with a furnished basement and a yard full of roses. I thought I'd be helping with his kids, cooking meals, maybe joining a community group. But the first year I noticed something. He never said thank you. I'd clean up, fold laundry, help with his daughter's homework. But every little task I did became something he expected. When I got tired and forgot to do the dishes one night, he snapped, "What else do you do all day?" I laughed it off the way mothers do. "You're just tired," I told myself. "Don't take it personally." But it kept happening. One day turned into 1 year. One insult became 10. "You're slow. You make the house smell like old people. You should have died with Dad." Each word cut deeper than any slap. And then the pushing started. Once I was walking too slowly up the stairs. He grabbed my arm and yanked me forward. I stumbled. Another time, I knocked over a glass of juice while making breakfast. He slapped the counter so hard I jumped. "You're useless," he roared. Still I stayed. Why? Because where would I go? My pension wasn't enough for rent. Mark was abroad and barely called. Lucy had a new husband who thought I was too much baggage. And truth be told, I was ashamed. Ashamed to admit that my own son treated me like garbage. So I stayed quiet. Until the night I fell. After that fall, something changed in me. As I lay on the floor, cold tiles against my cheek, I whispered, "God, if you let me get up tonight, I swear I'll find a way to leave." He did. And I kept my promise. The next morning I didn't mention the fall. I made breakfast like nothing happened. But inside I was watching. Planning. I started keeping notes. Writing down dates, what he said, what he did. I hid the notebook in the laundry room inside an old detergent box. One night, while he was passed out drunk on the couch, I took his phone and snapped pictures of the bruises on my arms. I emailed them to myself. Created a folder. Evidence. But I didn't stop there. At the grocery store one afternoon, I struck up a conversation with a woman in line, Sandra. She looked around my age, silver hair, soft hands. I asked her if she lived nearby. We talked about discounts, bad knees, and retirement. Then I asked her if she knew of any senior shelters. Her smile faded. She looked into my eyes and said, "You okay, honey?" I blinked fast, then whispered, "No." She took my hand. That moment, it was the first time someone saw me. Really saw me. We exchanged numbers. I told her not to call, only text. She agreed. Within days, she connected me to a women's support group at the church. I started attending. Quietly. It was at that church where I met a woman named Gloria. She had escaped her own abusive son and now ran a safe house for elderly women like me. I was stunned. How many mothers suffer in silence like this? Too many. Gloria gave me hope. She told me, "You don't have to scream to fight back. You just have to leave." But leaving wasn't so simple. Daniel had full access to my pension. He controlled the bank account. My ID was locked in a drawer in his office. My phone had tracking on it. He set it up for safety, he claimed. I had to be smarter. So I started playing dumb. I let him think I was forgetting things. I left the TV on. Forgot the salt. Wore mismatched socks. He rolled his eyes and called me senile. That was fine by me. Let him underestimate me. Because while he laughed, I memorized the key code to the drawer. I practiced turning off the phone's GPS. I took a picture of my ID and printed a copy at the library. I was building my escape, piece by piece. But time was running out. Daniel got angrier. More paranoid. One night, he stormed in and threw my dinner plate at the wall. "You think you can talk to people behind my back?" he screamed. "Don't test me, old woman." That's when I knew. He suspected something. And I only had one chance left. So I planned the escape for a Friday morning, when he usually slept in. I'd fake a grocery trip, walk 2 blocks to the bus stop, and meet Gloria's volunteer by noon. Simple. But the night before, something unexpected happened. Daniel didn't come home. He always came home. Where was he? Was he watching me from somewhere? Was he setting me up? Barely slept. I sat on the couch all night, the go bag hidden under my coat, my printed ID in my bra, trembling like a girl again. And just as the sun started to rise, the front door creaked open. Froze. Daniel stepped in slowly. And he wasn't alone. There was someone behind him. Woman. Holding a camera. What happened next changed everything I thought I knew about my son. But that, my dear listener, is a story for the next chapter. If this story broke your heart, made you feel seen, or reminded you of someone you know, please like, comment, and subscribe. Stories like mine are more common than you think. And sometimes just sharing them can save a life. Daniel stood in the doorway. His silhouette framed by the pale morning light. His jacket was half-zipped, and his eyes, bloodshot and dark-ringed, darted around the room like a predator. I could barely see the woman behind him. Her long brown hair and a handheld camera were all I could make out. My breath caught in my throat. What was going on? The woman stepped in, trying to stay composed. She looked young, maybe in her early 30s, and professional like a local reporter or someone from social services. Daniel glared at me, then turned to her. "See. Told you. She just sits here all day doing nothing. Wasting space." She didn't respond. Instead, her eyes locked on me, scanning the blanket on my lap, my trembling hands, the bruises that ran along my wrist. Something shifted in her gaze. Pity. Recognition. Daniel turned and snapped. "You getting this? This is what I live with. She's manipulative. Pretends to be weak. But she's toxic. Always has been." She lowered the camera slowly. "Mr. Lawson," she said, "I think we've seen enough for today." My heart pounded in my chest. Was this a setup? Had he called some journalist to humiliate me publicly? To paint himself as the victim? I tried to speak, but my voice came out dry. Who are you?" I asked her. She looked at me gently. "I'm Claire," she said. "I'm a documentary filmmaker working on a project about elder care and multi-generational households. Your son contacted me about being featured." Daniel scoffed. Told her I was a good example of what it's like to be burdened by a selfish parent. My skin went cold. A documentary. He was going to make me look like some freeloading parasite on national television. Claire seemed uneasy. Mr. Lawson, I wasn't expecting this. I thought this was going to be a story about resilience, about caring for aging parents. Not, she trailed off, eyes flicking to the crack in the wall behind me. Daniel's tone sharpened. Don't go soft now. You wanted raw footage. This is real life. But Claire wasn't convinced. She turned back to me. Do you want to speak to me alone? She asked softly. Daniel's nostrils flared. She's not going to say anything useful. She barely remembers what day it is. My jaw clenched. Right there. That was it. The way he spoke over me, as if I didn't exist, as if my mind had melted into mush. I looked Claire square in the eyes. I remember everything, I said. Daniel snorted. Here we go. Claire raised a hand. Daniel, could you give us 5 minutes? No, he snapped. This is my house. My story. But Claire was already dialing her phone. Then I'll reschedule this with legal present. That made him freeze. He mumbled something under his breath, then stormed upstairs. We listened to the sound of his heavy boots stomping until the bedroom door slammed shut. For the first time in a long while, the house was quiet. Claire sat beside me. Ruth, she whispered, are you safe here? My eyes welled up. No one had asked me that in years. I opened my mouth, and everything poured out. I told her about the fall, the bruises, the silent dinners, the bank account, the control, the fear. She didn't stop me. She let me speak. For over an hour I talked and cried, shaking from the sheer weight of everything that had been bottled inside. When I finished, she didn't say much, just nodded, took a photo of my arm, jotted something in a notebook. Then she said something that stayed with me. You don't need a camera to prove you exist. She gave me her card. I work with a non-profit for elder abuse. If you need help, real help, call me. Then she left. I sat frozen, my whole body trembling. That visit could have blown everything. But it also gave me a window. I waited until midnight. Then I retrieved the bag I'd hidden behind the washing machine. My printed ID. My envelope with $87 I'd saved from change and tips. And the small notebook where I recorded every date and insult and bruise. I tucked everything under my cardigan. And then I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't even look back. I walked slowly past the roses in the yard, past the mailbox Daniel never checked, and down to the end of the block where Sandra's friend, Carla, waited in her parked sedan. She didn't ask questions, just opened the door and turned the heater on. That night, I slept in a real bed, in a room with clean sheets and no locked doors. But my freedom was just beginning. The next morning I sat with Gloria again, at the shelter for women like me. There were 6 others in the room. Each one of them had their own Daniel. Different names. Same shame. I listened. Cried. Told my story. And then I said something I hadn't said in 15 years. I want my life back. Gloria smiled. Then we're going to help you take it. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. They helped me open a bank account, transfer my pension, file for financial independence. We even prepared a case file, complete with documentation of my abuse. But Daniel wasn't finished with me. He reported me missing, claimed I was mentally unstable, even called Mark overseas and told him I'd run off and needed to be institutionalized. Mark called me panicked. Mom, where are you? What's going on? I explained everything, choking through the tears. He was silent for a long time. Then he said, why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I was ashamed, I wanted to say. Because I thought you wouldn't believe me. But I didn't say anything. Mark promised to come back home and support me. But I'd heard that before. Meanwhile, Daniel began showing up at places, asking questions. He visited Gloria's church, left messages with Sandra, even threatened Claire, the filmmaker. He wanted me back under his control. And he was willing to lie to do it. That's when Gloria gave me an option. If you're ready, she said, we can file a legal protection order. But I hesitated. What if it made him worse? What if it triggered something? Then Gloria said, or you can do nothing, and this might happen to another woman. That settled it. We filed the order. Daniel was served at work. And the next morning, the entire town knew what he'd done. Because Claire, the filmmaker, had uploaded her short preview. It wasn't a full documentary, just a 5-minute clip. But it had everything, my voice, my face, and my truth. The video went viral. And Daniel, he was about to learn that the world doesn't stay silent forever. But the biggest shock, that came days later. When someone I hadn't seen in decades knocked on the shelter door with a secret that would change everything. Don't miss what happens next. If this story moved you, if you believe every voice deserves to be heard, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support makes these stories matter. The knock came just after breakfast. It was soft, almost hesitant. Gloria peeked through the window and furrowed her brows. Ruth, she said carefully, there's a woman here asking for you by name. My chest tightened. My first thought was, he found me. But Gloria gave me a small, reassuring glance. She's not with Daniel. Promise. Her name is Evelyn. Evelyn. The name echoed like a song from a distant memory. I stepped out into the foyer, my cane clutched tightly. And there she was, taller than I remembered, with streaks of gray in her long brown hair and crow's feet that deepened as her lips curled into a nervous smile. My baby sister. We hadn't spoken in 22 years. Ruth, she whispered, eyes glistening. I saw the video. I had no idea. I didn't speak. I just walked toward her, trembling, and fell into her arms. We cried together in that shelter lobby, rocking gently like we were little girls hiding from a thunderstorm. After we calmed, we sat in the living room where she told me everything. She'd been living just one state over. Tried to call me after Thomas died, but Daniel always answered. He told her I didn't want to speak to anyone, that I was sick, tired, getting senile. He'd cut me off from everyone I once loved. I believed him, Evelyn whispered, ashamed. And I hate myself for it. I took her hand. Don't. You're here now. And suddenly I wasn't alone anymore. For the first time in over a decade, I felt tethered to someone by love instead of fear. We stayed up late into the night, swapping stories, laughing through tears. I told her about Gloria, Sandra, even Claire, and the documentary. She shook her head in disbelief. That boy. He's not the Daniel I remember. No, I said. But he's the one I survived. Evelyn wasn't the only one who found me after the video aired. The comments section was flooded with messages from strangers. Reminds me of my grandmother. My mom went through this too. Thank you for sharing. I work in elder law. DM me if you need anything. It was overwhelming, empowering, but also terrifying. Because with visibility came risk. And Daniel's silence was the scariest part. He hadn't contacted me directly. No calls, no text, nothing. Until the letter came. It arrived in a plain white envelope, dropped off by a courier. No return address. Just my name, scribbled in that aggressive slant I knew all too well. Gloria insisted we open it together. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No threats, no apologies. Just 5 words written in thick black ink. You think you've won. My stomach dropped. What did it mean? Was he planning something? Gloria reported it immediately. We filed another report with the authorities. Claire tightened her video permissions. And I slept with one eye open again. But I refused to hide. Instead, I agreed to let Claire continue filming my story. I want them to see, I told her, what abuse really looks like when it wears a familiar face. So we filmed interviews. I showed her my journals, my bruises, the gaps in my pension records where Daniel siphoned off my money. She interviewed Evelyn, who testified how Daniel isolated me. She filmed Gloria and the other women at the shelter. It became more than just my story. It became our fight. But even as we stood strong, the silence from Mark, the son overseas, gnawed at me. Called. Left voicemails. Texted. Nothing. Until one afternoon, Evelyn burst into my room holding her phone. "Mark just posted something," she said, breathless. It was on Facebook. A photo of me, cropped from the video, with the caption, "I can't believe what I'm seeing. My own mother. Sorry, Mom. I should have been there." A flood of comments followed. "Where were you? You let this happen. Fix it now." And then, a comment from Daniel. Just one. "She's not the victim she pretends to be." The venom in those words was chilling. But what he didn't realize was, he was losing control. He was no longer the one shaping the narrative. It was. Days later, Claire called me. "Ruth," she said, "I've got something. You need to see this." She showed me footage from an anonymous source. A man, mid-30s, pale skin, nervous demeanor, secretly filmed a conversation with Daniel at a local bar. Daniel was drunk, luring. "She's making me look like a monster," he spat. "She wasn't some perfect mom, you know. She slapped me once when I was 8. I could have reported her back then, but I didn't." The man asked, "Why not just let it go?" Daniel laughed bitterly. "Because she still has that damn house deed." Claire paused the video. "What house deed?" she asked. Froze. And then it hit me. Thomas had mentioned something before he died. That he'd put our old family house in my name and left it untouched in a separate trust. I thought he'd been dreaming. I never saw paperwork. But if Daniel was angry about it, it had to exist. Could it be the key to ending all this? Evelyn made some calls. A week later we got confirmation. Thomas had indeed filed the house under my name in a trust. And Daniel, greedy as he was, had been sitting on it, waiting for me to die so he could claim it. And now I was alive, fighting back. We filed a motion to take full legal control of the property. And the day we posted that update publicly, Daniel snapped. He showed up at the shelter, uninvited, screaming, threatening. "I want my house. You stole it. You're not leaving me with nothing." Gloria had called the police before he even reached the front porch. They dragged him off in handcuffs. But as he was being pushed into the back of the squad car, he locked eyes with me and smiled. That crooked, cold smile. "I still have one more move," he whispered. I didn't understand what he meant. Until the very next day. A woman claiming to be my guardian showed up with court papers saying I was mentally unfit and Daniel had filed for full conservatorship over me. He was trying to have me declared legally incompetent. Erase my story. Take the house. Take everything. I stared at the document in horror. And realized, my son wasn't just abusive. He was trying to erase my very existence. If this chapter left you breathless, angry, or inspired, please like, comment, and subscribe. The fight for truth is far from over. And in the next chapter, you'll see just how far some people will go when they're losing control. I stood frozen, the court papers trembling in my hands. Words like mental incapacity, conservatorship, loss of autonomy blurred before my eyes. I felt the blood drain from my face. Gloria reached out, steadying me. "He's trying to lock you away legally," she said. "He wants full power over you again, through the court system this time." I couldn't speak. Just when I thought I had escaped, Daniel had found another way to chain me. The woman who brought the documents was a private lawyer Daniel had hired. Young, brisk, dressed like she was walking into a corporate boardroom. Her tone was cold, clinical. "Ms. Ruth Lawson, a hearing has been scheduled to determine your mental competency. Your son is requesting immediate emergency conservatorship. Given your age and the recent events, we believe the court may find you unable to make rational decisions in your own best interest." My best interest. How dare they? Gloria stood beside me like a lioness. She is of sound mind and she has people. Don't think you can pull this off easily. The lawyer didn't blink. Then I suggest you prepare her legal defense. The hearing is in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. 14 days to prove that I was sane enough to own my own life. I collapsed into a chair the moment the woman left. My whole body shook with rage and fear. Wasn't it enough that I survived the abuse? Now I had to prove I was worthy of basic rights. "I won't go back," I whispered. Gloria placed a hand on my shoulder. "You won't. Not on my watch." We spent the next few days gathering everything: medical records, psychologist notes, support group testimonies. Claire filmed new segments for the documentary. Sandra testified in writing about my physical and emotional awareness. But the person who made the biggest difference. Claire introduced me to a lawyer named David Grant. He wasn't flashy, wore rumpled suits and spoke softly. But his eyes were sharp. He sat across from me at Gloria's kitchen table and said, "You've been through hell, but you're lucid, focused, and aware. That's all the court needs. We just have to show it, clearly and without emotion." "I can do emotionless," I said. "I did it for 15 years. He smiled gently. "Then we're halfway there." We rehearsed for hours. He asked me everything: my birthday, my bank balance, the names of all 3 of my children. He even asked about world events. Passed every test. But one thing worried him. Daniel was claiming I had memory issues, citing a few missed doctor's appointments and mislaid items over the years. "He'll use that as evidence," David warned. "And unless we crush it with strong counterproof, the judge might lean his way out of caution." We needed something powerful, something indisputable. And then Evelyn had an idea. She pulled out an old VHS tape, dated 1994. A home video from a family reunion where I recited all the grandkids' birthdays, meal plans, and church hymns from memory. "I know it's old," she said. "But maybe it shows the kind of woman Ruth always was. Maybe it reminds the court who she really is." Claire digitized the footage and combined it with new clips of me reading, writing, and telling my story with clarity. A full picture of my mind then and now. But even with all that, fear crept in. What if the judge sympathized with Daniel? What if I stammered? What if I lost track mid-sentence? And more importantly, what if he won? If Daniel gained conservatorship, he could control where I lived, who I spoke to, what I did with my money. He could even commit me to a care home against my will. I couldn't go back to silence. I wouldn't survive it again. The night before the hearing, I didn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain against the window. My hands shook as I prayed. "Lord, please. If I've got anything left in me, let it show tomorrow." Then came the day. Courtroom 4B. Small town courthouse. Pale yellow walls and wooden benches that smelled of dust and pine. Daniel was already there when we arrived. Dressed in an expensive navy suit. Hair slicked back, lips twisted into a smug half-smile. He didn't look at me. Just whispered something to his lawyer. But I watched him. That face I once kissed goodnight. That mouth I once fed with a spoon. That boy, now a man, fighting to bury me in silence once again. The judge, a tall woman in her 60s, entered and called the hearing to order. "Ms. Lawson, we are here today to determine whether you possess the capacity to manage your own personal and financial affairs. Mr. Lawson, your son, claims otherwise. You may speak freely now." I stood up, cane in hand, heart pounding, and I spoke. "I was married for 38 years. I raised 3 children. I paid bills, planned meals, and held my husband's hand when he died of a stroke in 2006. After that, I moved in with Daniel because I thought he wanted to help me." Pause. "He didn't. He wanted control." Gasps echoed in the room. "He cut me off from my family, isolated me, insulted me daily, took my pension, monitored my movements, filmed me when I stumbled and claimed I was losing my mind. Have records, photos, witnesses." I took out my journal and held it high. 15 years of pain. And not once did I forget who I was. I remembered everything, because remembering was my only weapon. Daniel stood up shouting, "She's lying. She's turning everyone against me." The judge banged her gavel. "Sit down, Mr. Lawson." Continued. Clear. "I'm not perfect. I forget birthdays sometimes. I misplace my glasses. But I am not incompetent. I am not crazy. I'm a mother who's finally telling the truth. And I'm asking you, don't silence me again." There was a long silence. Then the judge turned to David. "Do you have supplemental evidence?" He played the video. Me laughing in 1994. Me today holding my own. The judge watched in silence. When it ended, she nodded, jotted notes, and then she said the words I had prayed to hear. "This court finds that Ruth Lawson is competent to manage her own affairs. The request for conservatorship is denied." Daniel exploded. "You can't do this. She's manipulating you." The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Lawson, I suggest you seek legal counsel for yourself." He stormed out of the courtroom, slamming the doors behind him. But I cried, openly, freely, in front of everyone. And for the first time in 15 years, those tears weren't from pain. They were from victory. Later that day, I returned to the shelter to hugs and tears and cheers. The other women celebrated with apple pie and lemonade like it was a holiday. Gloria whispered, "You did it, Ruth." But I knew it wasn't over. Because Daniel's lawyer had filed a counter-motion. Something we didn't see coming. He was going after the house deed next, claiming fraudulent trust paperwork and manipulation of an elderly woman. He was trying to strip me of the last thing I had left, the house Thomas left in my name. And this time, he was bringing a witness, a name we hadn't seen in years. My own daughter, Lucy. If you thought that was intense, wait until you hear what happens next. The betrayal cuts deeper, the truth hits harder, and justice is about to take a turn. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. The fight isn't over yet. When Gloria read the name on the counter-motion papers, her face went pale. "Lucy," she whispered, almost like the word itself might bite her. I snatched the document from her hand and scanned the name again. It was unmistakable. Lucy Lawson, my daughter. My last-born. The one I hadn't seen in almost 7 years. The one who barely returned calls, never visited. And now she was siding with Daniel. The betrayal hit me like a knife through the ribs. She'd agreed to testify that the house trust my husband left me, my husband, her father, was signed under mental confusion and emotional pressure. That I was not of sound mind at the time of the trust's creation. That Daniel had only tried to protect me from manipulative decisions made under grief. I sank into the couch, clutching the paper to my chest. How could she do this? I asked, my voice shaking. She was Daddy's girl. He left that house to protect me, not make me a target. Evelyn was pacing. It's because of the money, Ruth. That house is worth over $350,000 now. They want it. They've been working together behind your back for years. I wanted to scream, to tear something apart. Instead I sat, silent. But then Gloria leaned in, her voice razor-sharp. You're not going to break now, Ruth. You've come too far. He couldn't take your mind. He won't take your home. She was right. I'd clawed my way out of Daniel's grip. I'd survived his fists, his silence, his manipulation. But this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every woman who gave up her youth to raise children who turned cold. Every widow who held the home together only to be erased like a stain. I had to fight, not just for myself but for every Ruth out there still trapped in a basement. David, my lawyer, called an emergency strategy meeting. We're dealing with family fraud, he said. If we prove that the trust was valid and Ruth was lucid at the time, we can hold the house. But Lucy was there when Dad signed the papers, I whispered. She knows the truth. She saw me nod. I didn't even cry when I signed. It was his wish. Then why is she lying? Gloria asked. I clenched my fists. Because she thinks I won't fight her. David leaned forward. Let's surprise her then. We tracked down the notary who witnessed Thomas's signature. His name was Albert. Now retired, living in a small cabin 2 hours away. But when we found him and asked about the trust, his memory was crystal clear. "I remember Ruth," he said with a smile. She sat next to her husband and corrected his spelling twice. She was sharper than he was. He agreed to testify. That alone gave us ammunition. But we needed more. And that's when Claire stepped in again. She'd kept filming through everything, quietly, respectfully. Now, she asked for permission to use footage that revealed the contrast between who I was in the shelter and who I was under Daniel's control. It was startling. There were clips of me at Daniel's home, hunched over, trembling, whispering like I was afraid of my own voice. Then clips at the shelter, laughing with Evelyn, reading newspapers, helping with cooking, leading prayers. "Let the court see what freedom looks like," Claire said. And we agreed. The day of the new hearing arrived like thunderclouds. This time the courtroom was fuller. There were reporters in the back, friends from the shelter, a couple of people holding signs that said elder abuse is real. And in the front row, Lucy. I almost didn't recognize her. Her once bright eyes looked hollow. Her lipstick was too red. Her hands fidgeted in her lap. But when her eyes met mine, she didn't smile. No warmth, only calculation. The judge opened the session. "Today we hear testimony contesting the trust and property ownership filed by Thomas Lawson, now deceased, and currently held by Ruth Lawson, primary beneficiary." Lucy was called first. She walked up like a stranger, tall, and then she began. "My mother was devastated when Dad died. She was confused. She cried constantly. I don't think she even knew what she was signing." I sniffed. Daniel tried to help. He was always the responsible one. I stayed away because I didn't want to get involved. But I think it's clear she wasn't thinking clearly when that deed was signed. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Then David stood and approached. "Ms. Lawson, did you live in the home at the time the trust was signed?" "No." "Did you witness the actual signing?" "No, but I was there earlier that week." "Thank you." No further questions. Then he called Albert to the stand. Albert, with his cane and thick glasses, raised his right hand with surprising strength. "I notarized the document myself," he said. Ruth was clear. She even made a joke about Thomas not leaving her the car too. She was of sound mind. "I'd bet my license on it." Some chuckles. Then came the footage. Claire played a short, edited reel. Daniel yelling in the kitchen. Me flinching. Then, me leading prayer at the shelter, my voice strong and firm. "I have the right to live, to speak, to love." The courtroom went quiet. When it ended, the judge leaned forward. "Ms. Ruth Lawson," she said, "do you wish to say anything before I make my ruling?" Understood. "My husband left me that house because he knew what kind of children we had raised. He hoped it would give me safety. But it became a battleground. And I'm tired of fighting for my own name." I looked straight at Lucy. "I may be old, but I am not blind. I saw what you did. And I forgive you. But I will not let you take what was never yours." Lucy looked away. Her hands were shaking. The judge nodded. "The evidence is clear. The trust is valid. Ruth Lawson retains sole ownership of the property." Motion dismissed. The room erupted. Gloria hugged me so tight I almost dropped my cane. Claire was crying. Evelyn clapped her hands and kissed my forehead. But Lucy, she stood, turned, and walked out without saying a word. That night, I returned to the shelter. I should have been happy, but I felt hollow. 'Cause even when you win, you lose a little. I had fought. I had won. But my daughter's silence. That was a bruise no judge could heal. Later, as I sat alone, sipping tea, Claire approached me. "There's someone who wants to talk to you," she said. I looked up. And in walked Mark, my middle child. The one who'd vanished to Europe. Who never wrote. Never called. Now here he was, holding something in his hands. An old photo. Of me holding him as a baby. And beside him, Daniel. Only this time, I noticed something in the photo I hadn't seen before. Something that might explain everything that came next. If this chapter broke your heart, wait till you see what unfolds next. Family secrets, decades-old regrets, and one final truth that could change everything. Like, comment, and subscribe to stay with me on this journey. Mark stepped into the room like he was walking into a funeral. Quiet, respectful, unsure of how welcome he really was. His blue button-down shirt was wrinkled, and his face looked older than I remembered. But the way he held that photograph, delicately like something sacred, it stirred something in me I wasn't ready for. "I found this in Dad's old Bible," he said, his voice low. "I didn't even remember the moment it was taken. But I had to bring it." He handed it to me. The photo was slightly faded, but I remembered the day it was taken. A church picnic in 1985. I was sitting on a blanket with baby Mark in my lap and Daniel beside me, eating watermelon with a smile that stretched from ear to ear. But when I looked closer, my heart skipped. Daniel wasn't smiling at the camera. He was looking at Mark. And his expression, cold, jealous, almost resentful. Mark sat beside me, rubbing his palms on his knees. "Mom," he said, "I should have come sooner. I knew something was wrong for years. Your voice always sounded small, controlled. But I let Daniel speak for you. He said you were fine. Said you didn't want visitors." I said nothing. The silence between us had grown into an ocean over the years. He took a shaky breath. "I was a coward. I let the distance become an excuse." Then he looked up at me with eyes full of guilt. "But I'm here now. And I want to fix things." I swallowed hard. "You can't fix what was broken by silence, Mark." He nodded. "I know. But maybe I can stop it from breaking again." We talked for hours. About Dad. About Lucy. About Daniel. And that's when Mark told me something I never expected. Daniel told me once, when we were teenagers, that he resented Dad for favoring me. Said you both looked at me like I was gold and treated him like mud. I thought he was just being dramatic. But maybe that never left him. I gripped the photo tighter. It made a terrible kind of sense. Daniel had always tried to be the man of the house after Thomas passed. He wore it like a badge, but deep inside, he never healed from whatever wound he carried. And instead of facing it, he made me the target. But knowing that didn't excuse it. Understanding cruelty doesn't make it less cruel. The next few weeks felt like sunlight after a long storm. I spent time with Mark. He helped me find a modest apartment not far from Gloria's shelter. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Had a key. I had my own front door. And I had a voice. Claire finished the full documentary, titled Silent No More. It was released online and on a public television network. It featured my story, Gloria's shelter, and testimonies from women who had been emotionally and financially abused by their own family. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of views. Emails from all over the country. Women who had suffered quietly for decades and suddenly found the strength to speak. I was invited to speak at a local university's Elder Care Awareness Week. Me. Guest speaker. I wore my Sunday best and brought my cane and a printed copy of my speech. When I took the podium, I stared out at the young faces, students, professors, social workers, and I told them the truth. I didn't survive 81 years just to be erased by my own son. I didn't raise children just to be caged like a pet. Abuse isn't always bruises. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's being called crazy until you believe it. Paused, letting the weight settle. But I'm here to tell you, it's never too late to break free. It's never too late to remember who you are. The applause was thunderous. After the speech, a woman in her 40s came up to me, crying. "My mother lives with my brother," she said. "She always says she's fine. But I'm not sure anymore." Hugged her. "Trust your instincts," I said. "Check in. Show up. Sometimes silence is the loudest scream." That night I sat by my window, sipping tea, staring out at the quiet street. I should have felt victorious. But something was still off. Daniel hadn't resurfaced. After the court ruling and the conservatorship denial, he'd gone completely dark. No more letters. No threats. No news. Mark filed a restraining order on my behalf just in case. But I knew Daniel. He didn't vanish. He waited. And sure enough, the waiting ended. 3 weeks later, Gloria received a message on the shelter's emergency line. It was from the local police. Daniel had been arrested. Not for elder abuse. Not yet. For credit card fraud. He'd been stealing from other elderly neighbors in our old community, posing as a caretaker or volunteer, getting close and then draining their accounts. They caught him after one of the victims reported unauthorized charges. When the police searched his home, they found something else. A notebook, filled with names. Gloria's, Claire's, even the judge's. He had documented everything. Plans, rants, delusions. It was disturbing. The police called it concerning but not yet criminal. But I saw it for what it was. Session. Daniel wasn't done. He had moved from controlling me to planning revenge. That night I didn't sleep. Mark stayed over. Evelyn came the next day. We set up cameras. Notified the building's security. Gloria had contacts who helped install emergency alarms. Still fear crept in. Was this how I had to live now? Forever looking over my shoulder. And then, as if the heavens answered, something unexpected happened. I received a letter in the mail. No return address. Just a single sheet of paper. This time it wasn't from Daniel. It was from Lucy. Mom. I saw the documentary. I was wrong. I let Daniel twist me into something I'm not. I don't expect forgiveness. But I'm ready to come see you. If you'll have me. My heart raced. I read the letter 5 times. I didn't know what to feel. But before I could process it all, before I could decide whether I wanted to open that door, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Answered. A deep voice on the line said, "Ruth Lawson." "Yes. This is Officer Freeman from the State Mental Health Unit. We've just had an incident involving your son, Daniel Lawson. We need you to come down immediately." My teacup slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. What had he done now? If this chapter shook you, if you're wondering how deep the damage goes, don't miss the next chapter. The final moves are about to begin. Like, comment, and subscribe. Because Ruth's story isn't over yet. And you won't believe what Daniel does next. The walls of the police station felt colder than I remembered. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and everything smelled faintly of bleach and old coffee. I sat in a plastic chair, my cane resting against my thigh. Hands clenched in my lap as I waited for the officer to return. Mark sat beside me, tense, eyes flicking toward every closed door like he expected Daniel to come storming through one of them. Officer Freeman returned, clipboard in hand, lips set in a firm line. "Mrs. Lawson," he said gently, "your son had a breakdown." He was being held overnight for further questioning about the fraud case when he started screaming, pacing, mumbling things about a conspiracy and a war against him. It became clear he wasn't well. I blinked. "Is he in jail?" He shook his head. "We've moved him to a psychiatric evaluation unit. For now, he's under a 72-hour hold. But based on his condition, the hospital may recommend long-term observation." My throat tightened. A war raged inside me. Relief and guilt, sorrow and fear, all clashing. "He kept saying your name," the officer added. "Kept yelling that you took everything from him. He had your court testimony printed out in his pocket. Highlighted. Underlined." Mark stood. "Is she in danger?" The officer hesitated. "There's no immediate threat." "Yes. I think he's fixated on her." Closed my eyes. Even from a padded room, my son was still reaching through shadows to hurt me. Officer Freeman continued. "We've placed an order for psychological evaluation. But the hospital may request your input as next of kin. You're listed as his emergency contact." The irony was almost laughable. After everything he did, I was still the name they'd call if he broke. He nodded. If they need my voice to keep others safe, I'll speak. But I didn't go to see him. Not yet. Instead, I returned home. Evelyn brewed chamomile tea. Mark stood watch at the window, still protective. But all I could think about was the letter from Lucy. The apology I never thought I'd hear. The soft, clumsy words of a daughter who may have finally cracked open the icy wall Daniel built around her. I hadn't responded. I wasn't ready. But the next morning she came anyway. No announcement. No warning. Just a knock on my apartment door. I opened it and there she stood, thin, pale, older than I remembered. Her hazel eyes were rimmed with red. She wore no makeup, no jewelry. Just a plain sweatshirt and trembling hands. "Hi, Mom," she whispered. I stared. I didn't speak. "I'm not here to beg," she said quickly. "And I'm not here for the house. I know what I did. I know I helped him bury you, and I'll live with that shame forever." My lip trembled, but I held it firm. She continued. "I watched the documentary 3 times. And I cried every time. I kept telling myself I didn't know. But that's not true. Did know. I just chose comfort. Chose silence. I'm sorry." She reached into her pocket and handed me a folded photo. It was of me, holding her as a baby. My arms strong. My eyes joyful. "I want to remember that woman," she said. "And I want you to know. I've left Daniel behind. I'm in therapy. Quit my job. I walked away from everything he touched. I studied her. And I saw it. The shame. The sorrow. But also the flicker of something else. Truth. I stepped aside. And let her in. We talked for hours. She confessed everything. How Daniel manipulated her. Convinced her I was slipping, that I'd become bitter and controlling. How he made her believe the house was rightfully his, because he took care of me. "He used guilt like a leash," she whispered. And I knew that pain. Oh well. She cried into my lap like a child again, and I stroked her hair, aching with the memories of bedtime songs and scraped knees and birthday cakes with pink icing. I forgave her. Not because she deserved it, but because I needed to. Because every time I clung to bitterness, Daniel still held part of me. And I was done giving him anything. Later that week the hospital called again. Daniel had refused medication. Had begun scribbling paranoid ramblings on the walls of his room. He wasn't lucid. They needed a family meeting to determine next steps. Mark offered to go. But I said no. "I need to face him," I said. For the last time. The next morning I went alone. The hospital wing smelled of antiseptic and stale air. The nurse buzzed me in and pointed to room 5. I stepped in and there he was. My son. Unshaven. Pacing like a caged animal. When he saw me he froze. "Mom," he said, voice hoarse. "You came." I stood tall. "Yes, I did." He ran toward me, but the restraints stopped him halfway. "You lied to them," he hissed. "You ruined everything. I was protecting you. I took care of you for years and you made me into a monster." "No, Daniel," I said, my voice shaking. "You made yourself into that." He snarled. "I cleaned your messes. Paid your bills. You were never grateful. I was a prisoner in my own son's house," I said. "And you kept the key in your back pocket." His face twisted. "They'll believe me. You're old. You forget. I'll get out. And when I do..." I held up my hand. "No, Daniel. You won't." He went silent. I stepped forward. Just enough to let him hear the full weight of my words. "I forgive you," I whispered. "But I won't save you. You need help. You need consequences. And you'll get both." He laughed bitterly. "You always thought you were stronger than me." I met his eyes. "I didn't think it, Daniel. I know it now." Then I turned and walked out. The air outside was bright, clean, freeing. I felt 20 pounds lighter. Not because he was behind glass, but because I had finally let go of the idea that I could have saved him. Some people choose darkness, even when they're handed light. In the weeks that followed, Daniel was placed in long-term psychiatric care. His fraud victims pressed charges, and he would likely remain in that facility for years. Lucy kept visiting. Evelyn moved into the apartment across the hall. And Claire's documentary won an award for public service journalism. The final scene of the film was simple. Just me, sitting in my living room, humming an old hymn, the sun shining through the window behind me. Live. Free. But just when I thought my story had ended, the doorbell rang again. And what I found waiting outside changed everything I thought I knew about what came next. This isn't the end. It's the calm before the final storm. Next chapter will bring Ruth's journey full circle, with a twist you'll never see coming. Like, comment, and subscribe to be there for the final reckoning. The doorbell rang with an urgency I hadn't heard in weeks. Not a soft knock from a neighbor or a polite buzz from delivery. It was the kind of ring that came with news. Serious news. I opened the door cautiously. And there, standing on the porch, was a teenage girl with a tear-streaked face, curly brown hair tied back in a loose ponytail, and a backpack slung over her shoulder. She looked up at me, her voice trembling. "Are you Ruth Lawson?" I nodded, heart already racing. "Yes." She reached into her backpack and pulled out a crumpled letter. I'm your granddaughter. My name is Julia. Daniel's daughter." For a second I couldn't breathe. Daniel's daughter. I hadn't seen her since she was a toddler. I remember holding her in my arms at her second birthday party. Her cheeks covered in chocolate frosting. And then nothing. Daniel had shut me out so completely, I never got to watch her grow. She sniffled. "He never let me see you. He told me you hated me. That you didn't want to be part of our lives." My knees buckled slightly. I led her into the living room, sat her down, and handed her a glass of water. Her eyes darted around the apartment like she was piecing together the real story for the first time. "I ran away," she said. "After he got locked up. My mom, Daniel's ex, she's not in a good place either. I couldn't stay. I saw the documentary. I watched you speak. I want to know who you really are." Tears welled up in my eyes. All this time I thought my voice had only reached strangers, but it reached blood. It reached someone who had Daniel's blood and my spirit. I cupped her hands in mine. "You are welcome here, Julia. You are safe." And with that, the final crack in my heart began to heal. Over the next few days, Julia stayed with me. We cooked simple meals together, played board games, and I told her stories about her grandfather Thomas, about what love used to feel like in our home. She listened with wide eyes, as if the truth were filling a gap in her that she never knew she had. She told me things too. Dark things. Daniel never hit her, but his words were daggers. "He used to yell at the walls, Nana. He talked to nobody. He'd call your name like you were in the room." I stared at the girl who looked so much like my Lucy, and I realized something chilling. Daniel hadn't just been obsessed with hurting me. He had tried to replace me in his house. Turn Julia into someone who'd carry his bitterness, his rage. But she broke the chain. She chose to run instead. And I was proud of her. But then came the letter. Another one. This one from the psychiatric hospital. Daniel had attempted to harm himself. They found him unconscious in his cell, a torn piece of bedsheet wrapped around his wrist. He survived, but barely. The doctors said he was slipping fast. That if any family wanted to say goodbye, now was the time. Mark and Evelyn said no. Lucy hesitated, then declined. But I couldn't explain why, I just felt. Had to go. Not for him. For me. For closure. So I went. The hospital room was cold and sterile. Daniel lay on the bed, pale, frail, and shockingly small. Tubes ran from his arms. Machines beeped slowly. His eyes opened when he heard me step in. For a moment, silence. Then he whispered, "You're still here." He nodded. "I'm still alive. Still me." His lips quivered. "I thought I could break you." I stood at the foot of his bed. "You tried. Every day. But what you never understood, Daniel, is that you were never strong because you made others weak. Real strength is surviving what you put me through and choosing not to hate you for it." He turned his head. A tear slid down his cheek. I don't deserve it, he said. No, you don't. He closed his eyes. And that was the last time we spoke. He died in his sleep 2 nights later. Peacefully, quietly. He was buried in a simple service. No grand speeches. No flowers. Just the few people left who still had pieces of him. Mark, Lucy, and me. Julia didn't go. She said goodbye in her own way, burning a letter she wrote to him in the backyard. I'm not carrying your hate, she whispered to the ashes. I'm starting over. And she did. Julia got into a local college. Moved into a small dorm. We still talk every day. She calls me Nana and sends me her grades and poems she writes. One poem was about a bird. A bird with bruised wings who still flew. She said it was about me. And now, I sit in my favorite chair by the window. A warm quilt on my legs. A picture of Thomas on the table beside me. I look around this home, my home, and I feel something I haven't in a long time. Because this isn't just the end of Daniel's story. It's the beginning of mine. At 81, I reclaimed my name. I broke the silence. I found my voice. And I passed it on to the next generation. If you're still listening, if you've followed me this far, I want you to hear me clearly. You're not crazy. You're not alone. And you're not too old to start over. Speak up. Even if your voice shakes. Even if you think no one will believe you. Because someone out there is waiting to hear your truth. And it might just save their life. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, made you cry, or gave you strength, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive and maybe, just maybe, help someone else break free too.